body's very clever. And this might sound strange for someone that has acne right now, but acne, which is a symptom of the imbalance, any symptom in the body is telling your subconscious mind that there is something wrong on the inside. So what it's doing, it's alerting you that something is not right in your body and allows you to take action.
So Leigh, welcome to the Your Body's Way podcast. I am so delighted to have you on this show. I just need to explain to everyone, first of all, how I know you. We've literally, me and you, we've been talking for literally 36 minutes. I'm just looking at my clock. We've just been catching up and it's just been so awesome. And I'm so happy to see how incredibly well you're doing. You've got a new podcast out that is just doing insanely well from the beginning. And you're making waves in the online space. But before we go into today's topic, which is acne, which is a huge topic, and there's a lot to unpack. And you have a huge brain with a lot of information. So there is a lot to unpack here, and I can't wait to dig in. But first of all, I just wanted to let everyone know how I know you. So when we were talking just now, I was just doing the maths of how long I've known you. I met you at a Paul Chek medicine ball course. You were the instructor.
Yeah.
You weren't doing the course.
Was it in Brighton?
No, it wasn't Brighton. It was Leigh.
Maidenhead?
It wasn't Leigh Valley, was it? Or no, it wasn't Leigh Valley.
No.
I can't remember.
I can't remember.
I can't remember. It was somewhere kind of by the sea, I think. I can't remember.
That's why I was thinking Brighton, actually.
Oh, it definitely wasn't Brighton. I would have remembered. But
Eastbourne?
yes, Eastbourne.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's it. So we met. You're an instructor. You're Paul Chek, which is like an amazing, like I'm a huge fan, you know that, of he's like a holistic health guru, a total leader in the holistic health space, and you're literally his right hand man, teaching Czech courses all over the country. Is that something you're still doing at the moment, by the way? Yeah,
Very
you're
much so.
still
Yeah,
doing
been
it.
doing it 12 years now.
Yeah. So I've known you since, and that was I was 19. So I was doing the maths. I'm 37 now. So that
Wow.
is 18 years I've known you
Because
for.
I remember when I was applying to join the Czech Institute faculty, I asked you to come along and video me through a presentation.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah, I remember
The London
the
School of Sports Massage.
yeah, that was it. I was kind
But
of thinking, why was I there? I can't remember the function, like, or the reason why I was there, but you've just
you was my
reminded
camera
me.
person.
Yeah. And then what I find is in life, there are certain people in life who you're kind of you just keep bumping into them in life in general. And I feel like you're one of those people for me.
Like Starbucks in Enfield Town.
Yeah. Starbucks in Enfield Town. And then we ended up working in the same gym about 6 or 7 years ago in uh, oh, oh God, in central London somewhere. I can't remember the place, near Goodge Street. And I just bumped into you there. Like, there's just been a series of events where we've just kind of been bumping into each other. And this podcast is part of that for me, because you started your podcast about a month before I started mine. And I was like, oh my God, like, what are the chances? And I so have to chat to Leigh on my podcast. And so for me, this is just another event where we just happen to bump into each other again, because we're kind of doing the same thing. So I just wanted to tell everyone that what the background is and how I know you. And next, before you crack on with acne, I just want to say that the knowledge that you have on holistic health, just gut health, skin health, shoulder health, just all of the pieces of a person, your knowledge is so broad And I've always come to you for advice with my issues and clients' issues and students' issues. So you've always been the person that I've kind of wanted to go to get correct, solid information from. So that's what I need the listeners to know right now about you. If they don't know who you are, that's who you are. So um, anyone who's listening who is struggling with skin issues, acne, this information is going to be really, really valuable. And it's a total essential listening. So that is what I need people to know before we crack on. So yeah, that's what I have to say about it. So a very warm welcome, Leigh.
Thanks for inviting me on tomorrow. It's good to be.
Good, good. Okay, so we're talking about acne today, which is one of your specialties. It's one of your specialties because I know that you had issues with your skin growing up. And for my listeners and how I see things, the skin is it's right there, isn't it, for everyone to look at. So it's so closely tied in to your self-esteem, just how you feel about yourself and how you feel other people feel about you. Like it's right there, and it's a very sensitive subject for a lot of people. So basically, what I'd like is for you to just guide anybody who has issues with their skin as to how to fix it. That's basically what I want out of the podcast. So first of all, your story, like how did you become so specialized in acne, and also what is acne? So
Mm.
let's hear your side.
Yeah, so I guess my story started as a 13-year-old, and I remember this like it was yesterday. I'm sat on the sofa on a Sunday evening watching, I can't remember what, on the TV back in the early 80s. And my parents are sat either side of me, and they say, "Oh, you've got some nice blackheads on your nose." And I was like, "Oh, okay. I must be, you know, becoming a man," kind of thing. So I was kind of like, I was kind of excited, right? And as a kid, you want to grow up, right? So I'm thinking, oh, this is the start of me growing up. So then my parents went, look, we're gonna have to get those blackheads out for you. So I got my mum on one side squeezing my nose. I got my dad on the other side squeezing blackheads on my nose. And then, 20 minutes later, they were done. Didn't really think anything of it, right? But then kind of the weeks went past, and I didn't just have blackheads on my nose, which obviously just grew back, but I started to get spots on my face. And that was a bit like, oh, not really too keen on this. And then it got worse, and it got worse. And one of my closest friends at school, and it was in my class at school, it was like he was like 3 months ahead of me. And my acne kind of was the same as his. And if I looked at him today, I think, oh, that's going to be me in 3 months' time. And I was kind of saying to my mum, "Oh, what can I do? I don't really know what to do." Don't, yeah, it looked awful. Anyway, my friend at school said, I went to the doctor and I got some stuff, and yeah, it's a bit better. So I said to my mum, "Oh, can you take me to the doctor?" So she took me to the doctor, and we're talking 40 years ago, over 40 years ago, and he said, "Oh, you need to take this cream," and I can remember what it was called, Quinoderm, right? And he said, "And you need to use this cleanser morning and night. It's called 1006." So I was like, okay. So I thought, problem solved, right? Doctor's given me this. I can go home. I can use it. I won't have acne anymore. Well, a few weeks went past. Nothing really changed. If anything, it continued getting worse. And the cleanser was really harsh, and it would make my skin really, really dry. And then it would get really oily, right? Because what you're doing is you're removing all the oil from your skin. So what does your skin say? I need more oil. So then it would be like almost dripping with grease.
And actually, before you carry on, that reminds me
Mm,
of when I was a teen. Do you remember Clearasil? I think
mm.
they even still sell it. Like I went through a phase where I was using Clearasil and my skin was just getting worse and worse. Like it was getting red and I was having a bad reaction. So, the stuff they sell in the shops, they're not that great, are they?
I mean, it does make you wonder. We've got something called the Trades Descriptions Act,
Mm.
right? If it doesn't say what it does on the tin, that's illegal. But how? But they get away with it, right? And maybe we'll come on to talk about that in a while.
Yeah.
But so, I went back to school, and my friend, his skin started getting a bit better. I'm like, what are you doing? He said, well, I went back to the doctor, and he's given me antibiotics. I'm like, right, that's what I need to do. So I said to my mum, look, my friend's got antibiotics. His skin's a lot better. So my mum took me to the doctor, and she said, look, his friend's got antibiotics. He go, oh yeah, I can give you antibiotics. So they give me antibiotics. Started taking them, and things got better. So I'm thinking, at last, this is going to solve the problem. And it got better and I can't remember the length of time. It's too long ago to remember. Let's say it was 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And then it came back. And not only did it come back even worse. So I went back to the doctor and he said, well, you need another round of antibiotics. So what happens is you start taking this stuff, and because the doctor's told you to take it, you think it's doing you good. And if you think if you stop doing it, the only way is down. It's only going to get worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Like once you started, you couldn't stop then, because if you stopped, it would just get worse.
well, you think it would, right?
Yeah.
That's what's in your head. The doctors told me this. It got a bit better when I used it, and I'm still using the Quinoderm, and I'm still using the 1006, even though looking back, I was like, why didn't I question that? Because it didn't do anything, right? And it's toxic, and it smells. I mean, that stuff as well. If you drop it on the carpet, it stains the carpet. What does
Like
that tell you about what's in there, right?
like the warning signs were everywhere, but
Oh,
you're just so desperate to fix it.
yeah, you're desperate and you're young and you're naive, right? So, the knock-on effects of that, at school, you know what it's like at school, right? If you've got anything different about you, you're going to get slaughtered for it, right?
Yeah.
And listen, I was the same to everyone else, right? I mean, if I go through some of the people in my class, I mean, I was called Zit. There was big nose, four eyes.
Holy.
You know, that's just certainly what children were like then, right? So the knock-on effect really was, as you alluded to earlier, is that what it does, it really massively affects your confidence and your self-esteem. And you're really conscious of what other people think of you. And, when I got a little bit older, and started going to pubs and clubs and stuff, and, you want to meet girls and do all that kind of stuff. There were some nights when, I'd have lumps on my head so big. If you imagine if you cut a ping pong ball in half, painted it red and stuck it on your head, that's what they look like.
Oh my gosh.
I had every type of acne at the same time: blackheads, whiteheads, cystic acne. I had the lot. Big boils on my face. I had it all over my chest. It was all over my back. I remember once, my best friend back then, he was big into angling, and it was a really hot summer's day. And I went over to see him. Everyone else there's all sunbathing, right? And I love sunbathing, right? And I wouldn't take my top off because my back and my chest was, I mean, my face was all right, but my chest and my back was covered in these massive big boils. And I just didn't want to take my top off. That's just one example. But, there would be nights when I would just not go out because it just looked so bad. I didn't want to be seen by anybody, not even my parents or my sisters, let alone go out to a club and meet girls and stuff, right? And that was that was soul destroying for me. When you're young, you want to go out and have fun, and to stay in whilst all my friends are going out having fun was just soul destroying.
And also at that age, you're developing mentally, emotionally. Like it's a really key part in your life where it's important that you express yourself the way you want to express yourself. And obviously, not everyone's the teen years aren't great for anyone, to be honest, but it really doesn't help if you felt like you were suppressed in some way, like you couldn't go out and you couldn't do all the things that your friends were doing. Like that's a really key part in your life where it's especially like harmful and hurtful.
I mean, the other thing was, if anyone ever got a camera out, I would disappear. So, from that age, you'll be hard to find pictures of me those ages.
Thank God there was no Instagram back then.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
wouldn't escape it.
yeah, exactly. But the next thing that really affected me was my career. It really affected my career. Now, maybe I was reading too much into it, although I don't think I was. I'd be in a particular job, so I was working in a corporate environment back then. In my early 20s, and I'd be working like in a big head office, 800 staff. So you kind of get to know everyone, and then a new job would come available, which would be a promotion for me. And you know everyone else that's applied for the job, and you're like, oh, I'm definitely a favorite for the job. Well, based on the skills that I know I have and the experience I have, I should be getting this job. And you turn up for the interview, and it always happens. If you've got something like an interview coming up, the day of the interview, your skin will break out. It's, and there is a reason why that is, and we might come on to that. But the amount of times I went for job interviews that I really honestly felt I was the right person for the job, because I knew the other candidates, and I didn't get the job, but my face was always really bad on the day I had the interview. Now, it could be that maybe it just affected my confidence. I didn't come across well in the interview, but I always felt that whenever my face broke out, that people look at you like you're a teenager, because it's a teenage problem. So they don't look at you as a mature person. So when it's a job that might carry certain responsibility, they don't want to give it to someone who maybe subconsciously they're looking at as a teenager. So the amount of money it cost me, I mean, I couldn't add it up, but I mean, it's not just about the money, it's about the enjoyment of the job roles that I would have had. So it really affected my self-esteem, my confidence, my career options. And the other thing was my relationships. It affect your confidence, first of all, to maybe approach someone, to speak to them. Although, to be fair, until I was about 24, I don't think I'd ever been single. But I'm sure that during my 20s, relationships ended because of my skin. And I don't look at the other person and think badly of them, because it's not very attractive when your skin's that bad. Right. So, looking back, it did cost me quite a lot. It cost me money, it cost me fun, it cost me job opportunities, fulfillment at work, relationships. So I think sometimes when people look at acne, they think it's just a skin condition, but it's not. It's not just a skin condition. What it is it's a whole body. For me, the skin is a window to your internal organs, into your internal systems.
Like, it shows what's going on. It's the inside outside, basically.
Absolutely. So, you can talk about blackheads and whiteheads and cysts and nodules and all that kind of stuff that we kind of know about when it comes to acne. But for me, it's really an indication that there's an internal system imbalance. And the body's very clever. And this might sound strange for someone that has acne right now, but acne, which is a symptom of the imbalance, any symptom in the body is telling your subconscious mind that there is something wrong on the inside. So what it's doing, it's alerting you that something is not right in your body and allows you to take action. So whilst the 18 years I had with acne was horrendous, I mean, it didn't completely ruin my life. I'm not saying I didn't have fun during those days, because I did. But what it really did for me was say, there's something wrong with your insides, you need to sort them out. Because if it for instance, if it was just a few blackheads on my nose, I wouldn't have done anything because it wouldn't have bothered me. But what acne does, like any symptom, it motivates you to look into what's going wrong and to look into correcting it. The unfortunate thing is the corrections that most people are suggested don't work and they make things worse, which we may come on to.
So basically, you're saying that acne, people should reframe the way they think about it and think, okay, so this is actually my body just giving me a signal that something needs to change, and it's actually a positive thing.
Mm.
So I mean, up until this time, you were still taking your acne medication on the surface. So you're just applying surface creams and at what time did you realize that, oh, it's not actually about the creams, like they're actually not helping, it's about something that's going on inside of me? And basically, what are the causes, what are some of those root causes of acne?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you asked that question. It's a really good question, by the way. The time that I realized that it was to do with an internal problem was I was at Loughborough University, and I was in a lecture by Paul Chek, right?
Yeah.
This would have been in 2000. Now, he was doing a lecture. Now, I believe it was called Flatten Your Abs Forever, right? And he was talking about food sensitivities, food intolerances, food allergies, and all the symptoms they can cause. And he mentioned acne, and my ears pricked up. I was
Ding
like,
ding.
what? And then he started talking about hormones, and he started saying, well, that's related to acne as well. And I'm like, hang on, my doctor's never mentioned any of this before. Maybe there's something I can do here. So I went back to work. I was working at the time in a health club in Borehamwood.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, when you go back from a conference, so it was a weekend conference, I went back and you're all excited. And quite often you talk to your clients about what you learned at the weekend. And I remember I was talking to this client and she said to me, oh, she said, I've recently had a food sensitivity done just down the road. There's a Chinese guy that does testing. I said, oh, can you get me his number? So I went to see this guy, and he used what's called bioelectrical impedance. So
Mm-hmm.
when you hold a metal rod and they take certain ingredients and they pop it in the machine and they see what the electrical charge is going through your body, etc. And when I say he was Chinese, I'm talking proper Chinese, like could barely
Right.
speak English, right?
Yeah. That's when you knew you could trust him. You're like, he
Yeah.
knows what he's doing.
And he said to me, okay, I can't do a Chinese accent. So
Yes.
he
We'll
said,
imagine.
yeah, he said, first things first, stop taking your antibiotics. They're not doing you any good. I was like, what? That was a kind of a shock to me because if I stop taking them, my skin's going to get worse, right? And he said, the next thing, you're sensitive to gluten, to dairy, to garden peas, to black pepper, to chili pepper, to red peppers, actually all kind of peppers. And you've got a candida infection.
Wow.
So you need to cut out all these foods. So he gave me a long list of foods that I can and can't eat. And he said, you need to go on an antifungal diet.
And now looking back with everything you know, it's like no wonder your skin was absolutely screaming for help, because there were so many things going on with your gut and just infections. It's just there's no surprise. But I think it was you who gave the analogy of the spring, how when you take medication, you're pushing the spring down, 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 down. But then if you let go of a spring, it just explodes into the air. And I think it was you who said, if you push down, that's what the medication is like. But then as soon as you let go, just everything gets worse. And there's just no surprise really that you were getting these symptoms. Looking back, it's crazy.
Absolutely. And what was a real surprise to me, possibly, I mean, I am the kind of person that, I'm the, rip the plaster off in one go, or band-aid off in one go kind of guy. I'm not someone that tears it off slowly. That's an analogy, not literally. So, sometimes when I work with clients, when I say, okay, so these are the foods you need to cut out of your diet. I'm the kind of person who'll go home and just throw everything out of the cupboard.
Yeah.
But I know not everyone's that way inclined. And they might say, well, let me finish what I've got in my cupboards first. And then we'll maybe look at cutting out some of them. And then once we cut out a few, then we'll cut out a few more. Everyone's different. There's not a right and wrong way, right? But I literally went home, threw almost everything out that was in my kitchen cupboards, my fridge. I mean, I was eating gluten every every breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So within about 2 weeks, there was a dramatic difference in my skin. Dramatic. Now, I did continue to have breakouts occasionally for about 10 years, but I'm talking 2 or 3 a year instead of 3 or 4 a month.
Wow.
So
And was that just by taking out your food sensitivities to start
for
with?
the first 2 weeks, yeah. But then obviously as I learned more, so I went through quite a journey in terms of my own education over the next 7 years. So I trained with the Czech Institute for 5.5 years. So I studied what was that? It was initially called nutrition and lifestyle coaching. They had to change the name to holistic lifestyle coaching. I studied metabolic typing, which is another form of nutritional therapy, although it's technically a whole body system. I studied functional diagnostic nutrition, and those things together really formed the format of what I do now, really. So over the next sort of, say, 10 years, it wasn't perfect, but it was so much better. I mean, I wouldn't have classed myself as someone with acne. I was someone that might get 2 or 3 breakouts a year. I don't class that as someone with acne. But then as I learned more and more, and I started working more on my gut microbiome, started doing more detoxes on myself, probably the last 10 to 12 years, pretty much no acne at all. But I do know if I started doing the wrong things again, it would just come back.
Yeah.
So, and I can tell you how I know.
Yeah.
And I haven't had them for well over a year, but I love kettle chips, right? And sometimes you're dying for a snack. There's a supermarket not far from where I live. I don't do it anymore, but when I first moved in here, I would. You go to the supermarket, you think, I'll get a small bag of kettle chips. You go to the supermarket, they've only got the jumbo size bags, right? You think, oh, okay. I'll eat a few and I'll put the rest in the cupboard. And then next thing you know, the bag's empty, right?
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah. And then every single time I've done that, I woke up the next morning and my skin's broken out.
Yeah. Because
So,
I think that's the same with if something is inside you and it's just literally waiting to be released, it kind of what brings to mind is Dr. Terry Walls. She's okay, so she's she's a functional medicine doctor, and she struggles with chronic fatigue syndrome, MS. And she famously, it's an incredible story. She was basically wheelchair bound with her autoimmune condition, and she couldn't walk. But then she decided, she was like, okay, I'm going to investigate this, much like you did. She was like, there's got to be a way out of this. The medications aren't working and it's making me worse. So she studied functional medicine, and she completely overhauled her lifestyle and she overhauled her diet. Which she now kind of has as part of her own protocol. It's called the Walls Protocol. It's a fabulous protocol. But basically, she still has it, but she's completely recovered, as in she can walk and she can function and she's at the top of her game in what she does. But something she said that was really interesting, that reminds me of what you just said. She said, basically, it flares up. She doesn't have a hold on it all the time. Like, it flares up, especially if she's under stress. So, and I wonder if it's the same with you. If she travels, it flares up. if she has like any stress, it flares up. And I wonder if it's the same for you. You have such a hold on your lifestyle and your diet, but does it flare up even when it's not to do with kettle chips? Like if you have a stressful day or travel, for example.
No, it doesn't for me. But
Okay,
I,
right.
but I can tell you why that probably happens. Well, not just with her, but when it comes to stress,
Mm,
stress has an effect on your gut lining.
yes.
And what it does, it makes the gut lining more porous, so what we call leaky gut syndrome.
And isn't this a recent finding, really, relatively recent?
Um, yeah, relatively. I mean, it's probably been known a bit more than 10 years, I'd say, but
Mm,
it's relatively recent.
yeah.
But a lot of people find, eczema sufferers, when they get stressed, their skin gets worse.
Cold
Why?
sores.
Yeah, right. There's lots of examples of when you get stressed, any condition that you have or any symptoms that you have, they get worse when you're under stress. And one of the reasons, at least one of the reasons, is because it does create leaky gut syndrome, and what's ever in your gut can leak into your bloodstream. So things like, um, it might be a food that you're sensitive to. It might be fungus. It might be a bacteria. Um, there's a specific type of bacteria, gram-negative bacteria, and their cell has what's called lipopolysaccharides within the cell, and they're toxic, and they often get released into the bloodstream, and they can cause, again, all kinds of symptoms. So, and that's probably why when I was going for my job interviews, my face was breaking out, because it was the
Exactly.
stress of the interview
Mm.
that was creating the leaky gut, and now whatever toxins were in my gut were getting into my bloodstream.
I mean, I remember my nan, she used to have a cold sore, and anybody who has a cold sore would be able to relate. As soon as you have a stressful time, there it is. At the when you're at your lowest and you're so stressed out, then the cold sore comes along and just makes you think, oh God, like, can things get any worse? But isn't it interesting how all of these conditions, like skin conditions, autoimmunity, like they all have a very similar nature,
Mm.
and they can kind of all be backtracked to your gut, right? Like it's a commonality here.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of skin conditions are autoimmune conditions.
Mm.
I mean, acne isn't, but eczema and psoriasis, for instance, they are autoimmune conditions. So, there's no surprise that that's the case, really.
Hmm. So would you say that anybody who has problems with their skin, especially acne, would you say a food sensitivity is almost always a part of the problem, or was it just for you?
I would say I couldn't say for sure that it's always the problem.
Mm.
It probably isn't always the problem, but I would say in a lot of people it is the problem.
So they'd benefit from trying an elimination diet of some sort.
Yeah, yeah,
So are there any common foods that bring
yeah,
up skin issues?
yes. I mean, there's common food sensitivities, and any of
Mm.
them, I believe, can cause acne. So, wheat is a common one, dairy is a common one.
Hmm.
Dairy is a double whammy, which we might come on to, but um, soy is another one, which is quite interesting because obviously it's full of phytoestrogens, which you'd think,
Mm.
well, that must help with acne because acne is more of an androgen or male
Hmm.
hormone issue. Um,
Corn, eggs.
yeah, eggs can be for some
Mm.
people. It's the white of the egg normally that's the problem.
Mm.
Corn, I don't see corn that often as an issue personally.
Okay.
I mean, I do run blood tests, and yeah, sometimes I don't run blood tests because it's if it's a financial constraint for the client, I get them to do what's called a pulse test. Are you familiar with a pulse test?
No, what's the pulse test?
So rather than merely just eliminating foods, because that could take months
Mm.
doing an elimination diet, and also sometimes it's very difficult to be aware of the symptomology because a food can stay in your system for 72 hours.
Hmm. So
So
to link the symptoms back to the food,
yeah,
it's difficult. Yeah.
it's
Can be
very tricky to
frustrating for
do.
people. Yeah. To do the
Yeah.
elimination diet.
So the pulse test, what you basically do, you sit still for 5 minutes, try and get to a normal heart rate, You then take your heart rate, write it down, and then take a food stuff and put it under your tongue and just hold it under your tongue for 60 seconds. Remeasure your heart rate. Sorry, your pulse rate, not your heart rate, your pulse rate. And if your pulse has gone up by or down, up or down by 4 beats per minute or more, that's suggesting that you've got an immune response to that food.
Wow. That is
So
one hell of a trick that people can literally do today.
Yeah, so for anyone that, can't afford to do a blood test, that's what I normally get them to do. But again, it takes time. It still takes, can take weeks to go through all that. When I moved home just over 3 years ago, I decided to make a few changes to my diet, and not because it was bad, I was just trying things out. And I started eating this granola, and I thought, let me just run a pulse test on it. So I tested my pulse, and I had I think it was about 45 to 48 beats per minute, which is kind of normal for me.
Yeah.
And then I put the granola under my tongue and remeasured, and my pulse was 95.
Wow.
And I was
Put
like,
that granola bag.
So that went in the bin. So and I could literally feel my heart like that. So yeah, that went in the bin.
Wow. Well, that's an awesome test that anyone can try. So when it comes to why people get acne, so leaky gut you've mentioned. What are some of the other root causes? Are there other root causes like environmental toxins, for example, or speak more into that?
Yeah, so if you look at kind of the conventional theory on acne, if I start there and kind of work my way down. So what's kind of accepted is that it's due to androgen increase, so increase of male hormone. That stimulates the sebaceous glands, which is true. It's definitely true. So if an androgen locks on to a cell in the sebaceous gland, it will release more sebum. Okay. It also stimulates skin growth. So skin cells grow at a faster rate with androgens. So you've got more sebum, you've got more skin cells. That's what can block the pore. The pore gets blocked. The bacteria that live in the pore, now I've got all that dead skin cells and sebum to feed on. That creates the inflammation, that creates the redness and the itchiness, etc. So the medical community will say androgen increase is what causes acne. That doesn't tell you anything. The question is, what's causing the androgens to be increased, right? So there's a pathway in the body that causes growth, and it's called the mTOR pathway. Okay, and the mTOR pathway is stimulated by three things. One is high glycemic foods, so sugary foods. So things like table sugar, some fruits, and most foods that contain flour. Okay, certainly, plant-based flours like wheat flour, barley flour, your spaghettis and your breads and all that kind of stuff. The next thing is dairy. Now, dairy also increases insulin, as high glycemic foods do. They stimulate insulin, but they also stimulate what's called insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1. So those also stimulate the skin growth and the sebaceous gland secreting the sebum. The other thing that stimulates the mTOR pathway is an essential amino acid called lysine, which you can only really get from meats. Okay. Yeah. So you've got high glycemic foods, you've got dairy. The thing is with meat, and again, what I'm going to say is going to be controversial, but it's certainly my experience from working with people for 26 years plus a lot of study, is that animal foods are essential to a healthy diet. Yeah, some people can do okay on a vegetarian diet, but they'd probably do better with some animal flesh as well. So I wouldn't suggest to anyone to stop eating animal foods as long as it's good quality. But certainly dairy is an issue and high glycemic foods are an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And most people that have got acne will find they will definitely at least reduce their acne by cutting out the breads, the pastas, the sugars, and also dairy. Okay. There are other environmental factors that play a role. What's quite interesting is the two heavy metals, mercury and cadmium, have both been directly linked to acne. Low levels of zinc have also been linked to acne. And again, zinc plays an important role in the immune system.
And there's a way you can figure out if you're low in zinc, right? If you just look
There's
at your
definitely,
nails, or I think there are some simple tests as well.
yeah, to a degree. I mean, I would say testing your nails isn't always going to pick it up
Mm.
if it's low.
There's a,
Again,
there's,
I run blood tests on people to find that out.
yeah, there's also a test that I did with Emma Lane. Uh, she had a stall at a health convention, a fitness convention, and there was these zinc tests where you would taste something. You'd put a tab in your mouth or something, and if you could taste it, that meant that your zinc was fine. But if it was tasteless, that meant that you were zinc deficient. And I remember tasting it and it was tasteless. And so
Mm.
from there, I was like, okay, so maybe I'm zinc deficient. So there are some quite interesting tests for that.
Mm. I mean, the interesting thing is that so mercury and cadmium, we know are issues with acne.
Mm-hmm.
Low zinc is an issue. We also know that mercury and cadmium cause low zinc levels.
Right. So it's a vicious cycle.
Vicious cycle. And what's quite interesting, I had a client a few years ago who contacted me in her mid to late 20s, never had acne in her life before, never had it as a teenager, had always eaten a bad diet,
Mm-hmm.
but looked the picture of health, right? All of a sudden, her skin's broken out and she's getting married next year and she's freaking out, right? So, I've got her eating less sugary foods. I think she was already dairy free anyway. She was already gluten free. So, definitely improved her diet. Found out she had some bacterial issues. She had a parasite. We ran a protocol on that. Skin didn't really get that much better.
Mm.
We then ran a toxicity test and her blood mercury was off the chart.
Wow. That'll do
So,
it.
so, then I said to her, how much tuna are you eating? Because we know that tuna has got high levels of mercury in it. And she said, I have it every day for my lunch.
Oh God.
I was like, oh, okay. I need to have something else
There's
for
that
lunch.
problem. Yeah.
So, she cut the tuna out. I got her taking some liposomal glutathione because that's
Mm-hmm.
good for getting mercury out of the blood.
Mm-hmm.
And within a month or so, her skin cleared up.
That's an incredible story, and it sort of links into something that I've recently experienced. And you'd probably be like, "Oh, damn, that's so silly." But basically, I got hold of metal free,
Mm,
and I heard lots of great things about it. So I thought, oh, I hadn't tested myself for heavy metals, but I was like, oh, come on, like surely I have heavy metals in my body that need to be removed. So I managed to get hold of some metal free, the metal free itself, and then also I think they have like a detox kind of booster as well. So you take the metal free in the morning and then the detox in the evening. And it says clearly on the back, it says take one spray under the tongue and then build yourself up slowly to 8. Just
mhm.
build yourself up. So I was like, okay, like this is great. This is so much fun. Because me personally, I struggle with brain fog and I'm just not feeling as I used to, like since having kids, just I think female health in general kind of takes a dive after having kids. That's my experience anyway. But anyway, I thought, oh, like maybe heavy metals, like just get rid of the heavy metals. So I took one spray in the morning and the evening. I was like, okay. So I woke up and I was so impatient with it. I was like, I don't feel anything. Like everything's fine. So I took two. So I was like, okay, great. So then took two. Next day felt fine. I was like, okay, I'm going to take three. So I took three, and this is where you're going to be like, that's so ridiculous. Like this is way too fast, because this takes months. This protocol, right? Like to remove metals from the body, it's a long game. So I was
No,
just
that's true.
trying.
Metal free has been banned in America.
I wondered why it wasn't on sale anymore. I was looking for it like literally a few days ago just to kind of see where it was at. But that's really interesting. Would you say it was banned for good reason, or is it just no, not for good
No,
reason? Mm,
no, no. There's lots of things that are being banned that are good for health.
right. Okay. That's a real shame. Um, but anyway, just to kind of conclude my story, so I took three sprays, and then I thought I'm just going to stick with three then, because I'm just not going to kind of up it anymore. So I did three sprays for about 3 days, and then in the middle of the night, a couple of nights ago, I woke up with a thumping headache, like thumping. It was something that I've never experienced before, like in the middle of the night. And my neck was really stiff as well. I've never had neck stiffness, but it's just getting really stiff. And I was just like, what is this? And then I was like, shit, like maybe it's like the metals are being released into my body and my body's having trouble detoxing.
Mm.
So I very readily like reduced it. I didn't take it that day. And then now I'm just back to one spray. But it's a real shame that you can't get hold of anymore, because you were supposed to have a few bottles at least, and I have stock of one. I mean, that's really sad.
Mm.
That's
Yeah, because they did ban um, N-acetylcysteine as well for a while. Although I think you can get it again now.
okay.
But yeah, they're banning things that improve your health, and they're mandating things that do the opposite.
I feel like that's another podcast.
That is probably another podcast.
Or another 10 for
Yeah,
you. That's another 10 podcasts.
but just
um
just coming back to
yeah.
environmental
Mm,
things. So PCBs is
mm,
another one. So plastics, um, and then there are things like toluene, which
mm,
I'm trying to think of the other examples. So these are just common environmental toxins that you get that are all known to cause acne. So there are different experts that say this is what causes acne, and this doesn't cause acne. So some people will say acne is not caused by an infection, it's not caused by a bacteria, it's a toxin issue. Some people say it's got nothing to do with toxins, it's about increased androgens causing the infection. I think that there's multiple causes of acne, and
yeah.
different people have different causes. And that's why I always treat people like an individual and find
Hmm.
out what their cause is.
Because the path to overcoming acne, I can imagine once you have the path, it's fairly simple what your clients need to do. They just need
Mm,
to follow these protocols that you lay out for them. But it is not easy. It requires a huge amount of commitment, and they've literally got to dive in headfirst to overcome it. They've got to change a lot of things about their lifestyle, the way, the materials they use in their kitchen, the water they
mm.
drink, the food they eat, the creams they put on their skin, their deodorants. Like it's a huge undertaking. Would you say people find it difficult to make the change, or do people even give up before they get any results?
Some people do, and
Mm.
that's a real shame. What I was going to say when you started that sentence was, I wasted about £6,000 on creams, cleansers, and antibiotics, right? And I don't know how much money it cost me in my job because I wasn't getting those promotions. Probably, I don't know, a 5-figure sum, right? But the real thing that you miss out on is having that confidence and the self-esteem, and you miss out on fun time, right? You might miss out on relationships. You can't put a price on that.
No.
And for anybody, going through change is uncomfortable, right? We like to sit in our comfort zone. But if your comfort zone is doing the things that you're doing now and you've got bad skin, is that what you really want? Or do you want to step outside of your comfort zone for a short period of time whilst you're making those changes? And then those changes become your normal day life. So, for instance, the way that I live my life is just normal to me. I don't know any different. It doesn't take any more energy to eat good food than it does to eat poor food.
Mm-hmm.
Some people look at it and say, well, you're saying I've got to buy more expensive food, right? But actually, when you look at it from, I'm talking about the average person. The average person is saying, but it's going to cost more. But you're only comparing.
You're referring to organic food, right?
Yeah. So higher quality food.
Mm-hmm.
If you want higher quality, you do generally have to pay more. But when you're nourishing yourself with good quality food, with better nutrients in, you're more satiated. So then you don't need to go, you don't feel like you need that biscuit or you need that piece of cake, which is going to cause your acne, right? You're eating less food, but you're getting more nutrients. So you don't need as much food. So you don't have to spend as much. So you probably end up spending the same anyway. But when you look at it, this piece of meat versus this piece of meat, or this cauliflower against this cauliflower, yeah, there's a difference, but you don't need to eat all the crap in between. So at the end of the day, it works out roughly even. But then also look at it as, what am I going to gain from having clear skin? What difference is that going to make to my life? Well, I'm going to be more confident. I'm going to have more self-esteem. I'm not going to miss out on any fun time. I'm not going to cry myself to sleep or be anxious when I go to bed at night because I'm worried about how my skin's going to feel the next morning. So it gives you peace of mind.
So you're encouraging people to look at the bigger picture. Like, it's not just
Absolutely.
about the cauliflowers, like which cauliflower to choose in the moment or which meat to choose in the moment. It's time to reframe the way you look at the way you live and how much money you spend on your health, and to look at it as the bigger picture. Like, think about the quality of your life as well. That all counts. Are there particular foods that you would recommend then for someone who struggles with skin conditions? So you mentioned zinc. So I presume zinc-rich foods like shellfish and I think Brazil nuts is one of them.
Most meats have got zinc in them.
Yeah.
Some of the leafy green vegetables. I wouldn't recommend any specific foods for anyone. Okay. I would just recommend what's right for each person, because everybody's different. No two people, unless they're twins maybe, have the same nutritional requirements. If you live in a different environment, or you have a different amount of movement in your day, have a different amount of rest and sleep in your day, different amount of stress, different kind of temperature you're living in, your different genetics, they all affect the nutrients that your body needs. So when I'm working with clients and they say to me, should I eat this? I mean, sometimes there is a definite no, right? If you're gluten intolerant, don't eat anything with gluten in it. But if they say, should I have this? I've got a standard answer. Try it and see. So I always get people to do a diet log, and they log their reactions from the food. So are they satiated 2 hours after the meal? How are they emotionally 2 hours after the meal? Are they still hungry? Do they have cravings? How do you feel mentally? Because every time we eat, it affects us physically, mentally, and emotionally. And that's how we can start to dial into what we actually need.
And would you say the same for supplements then? I imagine you'd say the same thing. Like it just depends what your body needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I presume because most of my listeners would be female. So are males and females the same when it comes to this? Like everyone's on the same journey, or is there like a different protocol for, or like you said, it's unique to each person? That's your answer,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
there is a difference between males and females when it comes to acne in particular. So obviously men have higher testosterone, higher androgen levels. So in teenagers, a lot more males than females have acne because of the androgen levels. So I can't remember the actual figures, but it's much higher in males than females. In those aged 25 to 54, I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head, adults have between 25 and 40% of in that age group have some level of facial acne. 25 to 40%. I believe that's right. And then over the age of 54, I can remember this for sure, 12% of females and 3% of men have acne over the age of 54.
Okay.
So, I mean, I sometimes have people in their 40s coming to me with acne, and they've had it for 30 odd years. And I get people coming to me when they're 30 with acne, and I have to say to them, if you don't put this right, you could still have this for a long time. Don't think it's just going to go away because you're getting older. If you don't put it right, then the acne might not go away, and also because your bodily systems are imbalanced, you might end up with a much more serious disease because you're not fixing what's going wrong on the inside. And then you're going to end up being a nice little profit center for the pharmaceutical industry, which is what they want, right?
Yeah.
So what we also know about males, and this affects acne as well, and this is really important, males have a lower pH level on the skin, so a more acidic skin than females. Bacteria do not like an acidic environment. So that's one of the reasons why more adult women have acne than men, is because women have more of a alkaline, it's not alkaline, but it's more neutral than acidic, and that's not ideal. So things like aloe vera are fantastic for acne, or for any or almost any skin condition, but acne in particular, because it's acidic, so it acidifies your skin, so that really helps to rebalance the microbiome on your skin. But it's also very cooling, so if there's any inflammation, it just really helps to cool it down. And it's moisturizing. You want to keep the moisture in the the epidermis of your skin. So that's those reasons. Then the other reasons is the hormonal difference. So women tend to suffer more from what you call hormonal acne, and that's normally indicated by breakouts along the jawline. That's normally an indication of a hormone imbalance.
Because of our like roller coaster fluctations just through the stages of our life.
You're very complicated.
On so many levels. You're not even talking about hormones. You're just like, you guys, just overall, you're just so complicated. I just can't even deal. Only joking. Yeah, go on.
So there's definitely a difference between males and females. But still, at the end of the day, I always treat each individual as an individual.
But that's gold, what you've said, because we, females especially, but males too, we apply so many things to our skin, like makeup, moisturizers. So even if to just replace moisturizer with aloe vera, like that is a huge step forward. So that's really a really good tip for anyone who's dealing with the skin problems.
I mean, I use aloe vera on my face and head every day.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll get, when I shave my head, I get little
Mm.
nicks.
Mm.
Now, if I didn't use aloe vera, I do think that that would probably end up as infected.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't.
Wow, that's a good tip. Yeah, good
Mm,
tip to use aloe vera. I do have one final question because
mm,
there's just so much information here. I know that you could go on, but
mm,
I do feel I want to respect your time. So I do have a final question, and basically, I have a fasting program for females, and fasting is known to sort of uh, correct or help to correct a lot of health issues across the board. It's just one of those things like exercise. Like it's just it's a goodie. It's a goodie to incorporate into your life.
mm.
So in terms of the mechanism of action, or maybe not as complicated, but does fasting have a place in your protocols, or would you advise fasting? Does it help for acne in particular? Like, how do they link together?
Yeah. So in my online coaching program that I have for acne sufferers, it's not something that's in that program.
Mhm.
It might be something that I do with an individual if I'm working with someone one to one. Um, you know, everyone's different.
Mhm.
So I've found fasting can work really well for some people, not so well for others. I don't do very well on fasting. Uh,
Interesting.
I mean, I've done it a lot.
Mm.
Um, I I find for me, I lose too much muscle mass.
Okay.
I don't even have to fast for
Yeah.
that long.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I lost 8 kilos on a 10-day Vipassana once.
Oh gosh,
So
that's a lot of muscle. Yeah.
it's not for everyone, but for some
Yeah.
people it's fantastic. But what I have seen, or certainly claimed, and I don't see any reason why this is untrue. I have heard about people that have autoimmune diseases, and if they go and do a medically supervised 30-day fast, it cures their autoimmune disease.
Wow.
I mean, cures it,
Yeah.
right?
That's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think fasting could help some people with acne for sure,
Mm.
because when you when you fast, you give your digestive system, your whole internal organs, if you like, a chance to rest and recover.
Mm-hmm. Replenish
And quite
itself,
often,
rebuild itself.
yeah. And if you've got acne, you've almost certainly got something going on in your digestive system. Probably, almost certainly got leaky gut. So that will give it a bit of chance to heal, but also because you're not taking in any toxins, you're probably going to aid the detoxification process as well, which is an important part for most people if they've got acne, is to detox the body as much as possible. Because earlier on I mentioned the mTOR pathway,
Mm-hmm.
and I do believe it plays a role in acne, but the mTOR pathway has been around since before humans were even here, right? All mammals have an mTOR pathway. That's how growth happens. But if you look back a couple of 100 years, you won't find anyone with acne. So, this is something that I've thought about. What is it about modern living that in some way works with the mTOR pathway to create the acne? And it has to be some kind of environmental toxicity. It has to be, because when I was in the middle of my 18-year turmoil, I used to look really closely at old films or old photographs and think, why has no one got acne? So it's a man-made condition, right? So I definitely think there's a place
Mm.
for fasting with acne. Might not be for everybody,
Yeah. It's unique to
but
the person. Mm.
yeah, but there's definitely some potential advantages there.
Okay. Um, I mean that sort of brings my questions to a close. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add on the acne topic? Is there anything that you think everyone should know before we wrap up?
Yeah, so the way I would recommend anyone looks at acne if they've got acne is to think there's something your body's trying to tell you, and your body's trying to tell you if you don't put it right, you're going to get something a lot more serious than a skin condition. So it's really an opportunity for you to take action, and it's not something to procrastinate over. The sooner you start, the better position you're going to be in. So look at it as a whole body issue. And I basically break down my method. I call it the RAD method, right? RADD. This summarizes it all into a nice little chunk. So the R stands for replace the foods known to cause acne. Okay, and I always give up, foods to my client, a food list to my client, of which ones we know from research cause acne. Even though, by the way, the NHS on their website will tell you there's no such link between diet and acne. It's a myth. That's what they say on the NHS website. And then they list all the side effects of the treatments that they recommend. And they are pages and pages and pages long. And they include things like cancer and suicide.
Oh my gosh.
Right. But then, we know that the medical industry has been captured by the pharmaceutical industry, but that's another podcast.
Yeah.
The A of RAD stands for avoid the foods that you're allergic or sensitive to, which we spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two Ds. So it's RADD. The first D is to detox from the outside in. And what that means is limit your exposure to external toxins. So you mentioned some of them. So things like tap water, which have got chlorine, terrible for your skin. Fluoride.
What do you think of bottled water, plastic bottled water?
Not a good idea.
Yeah.
Because again, the plastic will leach into the water, and they're hormone disruptors. But also, I'm starting to hear even some of the brands that I used to recommend have got high levels of heavy metals in them.
Wow.
Including graphene oxide, which is scary. So, avoiding things like, as I say, tap water, the toiletries that you mentioned, a lot of the cookware is toxic. Even the air is toxic, but there's things that you can do, like getting good air purifiers, certain plants around the home.
I think in the bedroom, an air purifier is a good investment, because you spend like
definitely.
12 hours or, 8 hours or so.
Just get some good plants. There are specific plants that are really good for detoxing the air. I have crystal salt lamps everywhere, which does a similar thing. So again, it does help to have a professional to help you identify which toxins you've got in your environment that you're exposing yourself to. Even electromagnetic radiation is one I would seriously consider as well, because that does a hell of a lot of harm to the body. So, your mobile phones and your laptops and your Wi-Fi's and your Bluetooth headphones, which, they're frying your brain as well. Just because something is legal doesn't mean it's safe. And those things definitely are not safe. I've got protection devices all around me right now because I've got my laptop in front of me.
I can see the aura. You have like an aura around you. Like, don't touch me. I'm protected.
So the process I go through with clients is kind of coaching them. Okay, so you've got these pans. Okay, so these are options you can replace them with. And then, it always boils down into the day to budget. So, okay, you can't afford to replace the whole set now. How much could you replace now? When could you replace maybe the frying pan? Okay, 3 months time. Okay, great. What about the big saucepan? That'd be 9 months time. Okay, great. Okay. If you're not like me, you just go home and throw all your cookware away and order a whole new lot for a couple of £1,000. So that's the first D. The second D is to detox from the inside out. So that's doing your heavy metal detoxes, your liver cleanses, your colon cleanses, your skin cleanses, your cell cleanses, removing any kind of metal from your mouth. I mean, you shouldn't have any metal in or on your body, because that, again, massive problem. So the RAD method really sums up everything that I do to help people with acne, and that's the kind of thing I would suggest people think about when trying to deal with acne. But the other thing I would just add as well that's really important, and it's kind of detoxing from the inside out, but sometimes it's not quite a detox, and that's just balancing your gut microbiome. And again, I would say it's best done with someone who really knows what they're doing. I mean, yes, you can take probiotics and you can use fermented foods and all that kind of stuff. That's all good. But working with someone that knows what they're doing, if you can, would be the best option.
Okay. So the RAD method is just one string to your bow, but I know you have many other strings, including your podcast, which is just slaying it. So, where can people find you, listen to you? Where can they find more about you?
So if people want to learn a bit more about acne in particular, they can go to www.skinwebinar.com, and people can, from that site, they can also request an acne breakthrough call with me. My podcast they can find at www.radicalhealthrebel.com. And if people are interested in one-to-one consultation, they can go to www.bodycheck, and the check is spelled CHEK.co.uk.
Fabulous. Well, all this leaves me with is just more questions, and we're going to have to do more podcasts in the future, I think. So, thank you so much for coming on the
My
show.
pleasure.
It's just, yeah, this was amazing, and yeah, thank you so much.